Welcome to Grappling with Gray, forum for promoting an ethical mindset and ethical decision-making to help us more clearly see both sides of complex issues and better navigate the moral challenges of everyday life. I am Rabbi Yonason Goldson, and I'd like to welcome my guest today. With me is Jennifer Elder, who's a CPA and certified speaking professional. She helps leaders future-proof their businesses by making smart decisions and staying ethical. Jim Ristuccia, did I say that right?
Yeah, that's good.
Wonderful.
Good job.
Jim is CEO, Peer Advisory Group Chair with Vistage Worldwide Incorporated, facilitating meaningful and impactful conversations to help leaders become the best versions of themselves and grow their organizations. And Jon Strickler is Peer Leaders Group Chair, also with Vistage Worldwide Incorporated. He is a West Point graduate and business consultant with operational experience in more than 40 companies across 4 continents, as well as a national champion mountain biker. Thank you all for being with me today.
It's a pleasure.
Happy to be here.
And here is our topic. Recently, I had enough of charter communications. My monthly fees kept going up, service got worse, and AT&T came around with faster service at a low rate locked in for 10 years. I signed up, then called Charter to cancel. Immediately, they offered to upgrade my service and slash my monthly fees. When I demurred, they offered me discounted cell phone service and their firstborn child. Okay, I made that part up. A few weeks later, I called the St. Louis Post-Dispatch to cancel my mother's subscription after the price went up to $175 a month. Same story. Please stay and we'll cut your fees by over 50%. The service industry is famous for offering special deals to attract new customers. But what about their old customers? Shouldn't loyalty count for something? And don't these special offers indicate that customers are paying more than they should be? Are we better off living in a world where we cultivate loyalty rather than trying to seduce strangers to abandon long-standing relationships? Is this really the best way to do business? Or would businesses do better in the long run, working harder to retain the customers they have? And even if it is best for the bottom line, what is the social cost? The floor is open.
I think the social cost is there's a lot of frustration out there. I think, you're dealing with it and you kind of even know it's so routinized in our culture that we just expect it to be taken advantage of. And that just sets up the distrust from the very beginning from, you're going to get taken advantage of, they're going to do these things and it happens anyway because you don't feel like you have a choice.
Yeah, that's a really insightful point, Jim. My colleague Ron Carucci wrote in the Harvard Business Review that the more, and it's also kind of self-evident, that the more we perceive the culture around us to be unethical, the more inclined we become to be more unethical. So it sends us into a morally downward spiral that ultimately makes the world a lot less pleasant place to live in, no?
It does. And it starts when people feel like they're being taken advantage of and they don't have a way to fight it in any reasonable way, they are far more likely to become unethical in response. Saying that because there's now an instant justification, is that, well, they're taking advantage of me, so I'm going to get back at them. And had they not taken advantage of me, it wouldn't be a problem. The problem is when it bleeds over between organizations. So to Jim's point of we start to expect that certain industries will take advantage of us, like cable companies, cell phone companies, but then people started sharing their Netflix passwords and arguing that, well, everybody else is taking advantage of me, so I'll just get back at the world a little bit.
Yeah, I think this is an all too common business practice. I mean, the business model seems to be lure people in at an attractive rate, keep bumping their rates until they complain, and then deal with them again. I mean, it's almost the way the game is played. This discussion actually reminded me that I hadn't called my cell phone carrier in a couple of years, and I needed to call them again. So just today, I reached out to them and said, "Hey, I'm going to cancel my service. What can you do?" And I actually got $50 off of my rate, or $50 a month off the rate with basically the same service. So it's almost like you have to know how the game is played. They lure you in with attractive rates, bump them up as much as they can until people complain, and then they deal with you until the next time you start complaining.
It sort of perpetuates that squeaky wheel phenomenon, right? The way to get ahead of life, or at least the way to stay even in life, is to just complain, and the people who don't do that are penalized.
I have a friend of mine whose calendar is marked every year or every renewal period with SiriusXM. He says he calls them right before it's time to renew and says, "I'm going to cancel," because he knows that his rate is going to double. But when he says he's going to cancel, they give him whatever promo rate is. So it becomes incumbent upon people to learn how to play the game. And I love that phrase, because it really does seem like a game, and you have to be aware that there are rules to follow to play that game in order for you to win. But then we get back to that social cost, and is that a good way for us to be behaving in life or in business, to treat our customers that way?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think businesses could ask themselves, what would I get if I played the game differently? What if it was as easy to cancel as it is to sign up, and people didn't feel like they'd have to, fight and spend 30 minutes on the phone anytime they wanted to cancel a service? And I think, then you get people that are willing to try things, see if they like it. Maybe they'll stick around. If they don't, at least you'll get a good reason for why they don't. Get some feedback and some more engagement with your customers. So I think there's a business model here of how do you do it differently in a way that helps you stand out.
Well, that's more ethical model, more customer centric, more of a give and take back and forth between both entities, that you can have, you're getting something. To go back what Jennifer said briefly, you talk about this game, and then the game becomes exhausting. There's a physiological component to this, that you get exhausted having to keep track of this, and then having to call them up, and then it leads into an ethical thing, because now you're saying I'm going to cancel, but your really intent is not even to cancel, it's just to play the game. So
Yeah.
like we talked about, we're going down that rabbit hole of being unethical too, to say that we're going to cancel when we don't mean to.
That's right, Jim. When I was talking to my carrier today, I told them I wanted to cancel, and at first they didn't argue with me. She's like, "Well, here's how you do it." I'm like, "Well, wait a minute, don't you have better rates?" she forgot to play.
Yeah, and how would it be, it from a business perspective, it costs way more to attract a new customer than keep an existing one. So to your point, Jonathan, what if we rewarded people for being a long-time customer, and instead of your rate going up, maybe your rate should go down a certain amount every year as a loyalty point?
Well, isn't that what car insurance companies do? If you sign up and you have a good record for a certain period of time, then your rates go down.
Mm-hmm.
So it's clearly working somewhere.
I would go say, John, I bet you we have the same insurance carrier, because I have USAA, and
Right. Yes.
my account number. I've been with them such a long time, because I had them since 1986. I mean, I've had the same insurance company since then, because they treat you well and they give you rebates when they make a little extra money. They give you a little extra money back.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it seems to me that there should be special rates reserved for people that have been with you a certain amount of time, right? Like, yeah, we know we have to track people from their current rates, but if somebody's been with you, I think I've been with I keep going back to my mobile carrier. I think I've been with them for 15 years. So, you would think that I'd qualified into something special with them or earn some loyalty points that I can redeem for a special rate. But it doesn't seem like they've adopted that.
Now, if we play devil's advocate here,
Go ahead.
we're talking about a business whose mission in life is to make a profit. And if you don't have a customer complaining about the rates, then why shouldn't they keep charging them whatever they're charging them and doing, you know, in order to grow your revenue, you have to attract new customers. So doing whatever it takes to attract new customers, if that's offering that 50% off discount or, you know, so many years at a discounted rate, while on the one hand, we could say offering loyalty credits is probably in the best interest of, you know, social mores, and it's an ethical way of treating your customers. But on the other hand, is that what your shareholders would want?
Well, I think then you have to actually do the research and try to investigate which is ultimately the more profitable model. But, you know, it gets me wondering, are we still a society that values loyalty and values relationships in a business sense? I mean, I think about these big box stores. I mean, they just put in a Costco a mile from my house, and it's wonderful. It's just so convenient. And I didn't really have a relationship with anywhere else that I would go, but you know, when it comes to lumber and that type of stuff, tools, we used to have a neighborhood lumber shop that actually got knocked out for the Costco. And I preferred to go there to Home Depot or Lowe's or Menards because I knew the guys.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't great friends, but I knew that they knew me on site. I knew them. They were helpful. If I had a problem, they'd talk to me about it and help me figure it out. And I knew I might be paying a little bit more. But one, I liked the environment, and two, I like to support my own community. And I wonder if there's much of that around anymore, or if we just want the most convenience and the best deal, and we're willing to sacrifice the loyalty and the relationships for that.
Yeah, I think there's a place for both here. You know, if you're a carrier, it's really hard to differentiate yourself. I mean, you might have better coverage in some areas and people are going to go with you for that. But it seems to me like the business model there is, you know, let's attract customers, and as long as they're happy, we can bump the rates up a little bit. They probably won't notice, and as long as they're not too motivated, they'll leave us alone. But I think there is a way to add additional service that people are willing to pay for and increase your margins that way as well. And I think that's, to me, a more ethical way of doing things. I think it just becomes difficult in some of these less differentiated kind of services.
Yeah, I think the hardware store, you're actually interfacing with someone, a person, you're having a conversation. I don't feel like you'd have that same level of conversation with someone at a you know, cell phone carrier or your cable company. It's not the same relationship where you're going to walk in and talk to somebody.
Right.
It's a little bit different in that aspect. But I think one question was asked is like, is this the most profitable? I think the answer is yes, because we know what the model is, because that's what they're doing. If it was more profitable, they would do a different model. So it's obviously more profitable doing it this way. The ethical part becomes this is not transparent what the pricing is. It's
Yeah,
like,
I don't know. It's been so long since a cell phone company or a cable company, these commodity services, it's been so long since any of them did anything resembling appreciating customers or loyalty that I'm not sure they do know. They know that what they're doing now is profitable enough.
And in the short run.
In the short run. But do they know, does it make a difference to them? And it's been so long since anybody's treated customers like a human being that I'm not sure that they do know whether it's more profitable to treat your existing customers better than your new customers.
If you're worried about what your numbers are for the quarter, for your quarterly report, that's the only thing you care about. So you only care about the next 90 days and
Right.
what your numbers look like. You don't care about keeping a customer for 5 or 10 years because some other guy's going to have the watch by that time.
Yeah.
Woman, excuse me, I should say, you know.
Yeah, I
But
think
yeah,
that's
because-
absolutely true. The focus ends up being purely on profitability. And these are all publicly held companies that have to issue their earnings every quarter and very easily compared to each other. So they're doing whatever it takes to make their numbers and keep their shareholders happy. And customer is getting the short straw on the relationship end.
Mhm.
There's something I've been wanting to research for a while. Is you remember those very very cute Discover commercials where people call up and wow, you're a live person. And it was one of the reasons that I really enjoyed doing business with Discover because you called up and you got a live person. And at some point I noticed I wasn't getting a live person anymore.
Mm.
I wonder if they simply decided that it wasn't financially worth it.
That marketing campaign ran out.
Well, presumably because they stopped doing it, because they decided they made more money otherwise. I don't know why else they would stop it if it were working or breaking even.
But, we can go back to one of the original points here of, are we encouraging bad behavior by taking advantage of our customers and our customers feeling that the only way they can fight back is, hey, I'm going to cancel my service. Not really, but I'm going to tell you that I'm canceling my service. Do you recognize that you are lying and impugning your integrity by doing that? And I know that there's a quick answer there of saying, yeah, but I wouldn't if they weren't taking advantage of me. And so now we're setting an example where it's people are justifying their behavior, saying this is the only way I can play the game.
Mhm.
That's interesting because, I have called up and just said, hey, do you have a better plan for me? And the problem I have is when I say I'm going to cancel, I get somebody right away. Like they send you to the person and you're at the front of the line. If you say I want to investigate my plans, it's like, well, hold on a second. I'll find somebody that can talk to you and you're on hold for a while. So you're right. It is encouraging bad behavior in that respect. On the other hand, so far we've been talking about companies that are acting ethically. And I think there's an aspect of this where some companies don't even do this ethically. You can sign up for the program online, and I think there was a wine club I was signing up for, and you could sign up for it online, but if you wanted to cancel, you had to call their number and talk to a live person and give them the 20 reasons why you wanted to cancel and make sure that they didn't have another offer that you might want to consider before you canceled, et cetera, et cetera. I know my mom recently moved from her longtime home in Delaware to a new state, and he called up and canceled a lot of the services they had, and it was just painful, like hours on the line to cancel one service. And they make it hard so that you do stick around.
Mhm.
And to me, that's unethical. That's where they cross the line from we're trying to do good business to we're doing things that make it hard for people to get out of a service that they no longer need even.
Yeah, and then there are the companies that say, you see the ads on TV, limited time only. We'll send you free whatever product X, Y, and Z. But when you go online to get product X, Y, Z, you find out you have to sign up for a subscription and give them your credit card number. And wait a minute, you were supposed to send me this free so I could try it. And that's how they advertise it, as a trial.
Mhm.
And then good luck trying to cancel your subscription.
Yeah.
If you can't get through to anybody, you'll call their 1-800 number and you click on the cancel subscription and somehow you get disconnected. I don't know how that happens.
It's all part of the system. They create this sticky system to make it really, really hard so that you can't cancel or you can't change it.
So how do you balance there's the social contract, which I think is fairly evident that this is not an ethical way to treat your customers. But on the other hand, there's the business side. And unless somebody's got B Corp status, their mission in life is to make money, not to do something that is socially positive. So how do you weigh two competing, they're equally right approaches?
Yeah, I think there's a way to balance those. There's a couple companies that have made this kind of central to the way they operate. Two that come to mind are, I think Netflix has an easy cancel policy, and HubSpot's another one that does a really good job on it. If you're familiar with the CRM system HubSpot,
Netflix had to adapt because they had an exorbitant amount of consumer complaints related to their cancellation policy. So it was either you're going to get
Hammered.
class action lawsuits or hammered by the Consumer Protection Office, or you adapt. So I don't think Netflix did it by choice. HubSpot, I think I've worked with them for quite a number of years, and I think that's an organization that has always tried to treat their customers ethically.
Yeah, if you put your customers first, you'll get that loyalty, and they might even be willing to pay more, right? If they know that they can try features, turn them on and off, and not have to get the runaround to do it, maybe they'll try some things they otherwise wouldn't have, and you'll end up being able to bill them more for using more of your application. In their case, but you're right, Jennifer. So in some cases, the federal government's had to step in and say, hey, there's policies, and if you cross these ethical lines, we're going to prosecute. And I think even some recent changes have come about that some people are having to start adopting. That may be why my T-Mobile person didn't immediately give me options for when I said I wanted to cancel. I think there's some new regulations in place since the last time I spoke with them.
I was thinking about the model of Zappos shoes, which I think is just such a remarkable story that, when you call in, they are in, the people who answer the phones are encouraged to spend as much time as they can with the customers. And they actually, they keep, they give awards if you think 56 minutes or something, or an hour and a half is the longest anyone stayed on. Yeah, they're talking about their friends and their families and their personal problems, and they're getting free therapy, and some elderly person has a problem getting out there, so the person drives to their house. It takes, really extraordinary stuff. And I can't see that model is going to work for cell carriers. But on the other hand, be creative. Look for ways to create a personal connection at some level within what's realistic. Often you can find those types of things if you put your mind to it.
Well, that reminds me of Chewy.com, the pet food online delivery service. They have a policy in place where, you've got monthly subscriptions. And if, unfortunately, your pet passes away and you forget to cancel your subscription, their policy is you don't have to return the food. We will credit your account, and we would like you to donate the food to the local shelter or to someone else who needs it, your choice. And it's just an automatic thing. Thankfully, I've never had to take advantage of that, but I did have a situation 2 months ago where I had, one of my cats had to change their food, and I forgot to change my Chewy order. because now he's getting some prescription food from the vet. So suddenly I get this big box that has like 2 months worth of cat food that I'm never going to use. So I called Chewy and I said, I screwed up. And they said, no problem. We'll credit your order, donate the food. I was like, wait, what? This was my mistake. I'm willing to pay to send it back, charge me the shipping fee, that's fine. And they're like, no, just donate the food. Yeah, you're going to be hard pressed to get me to change from Chewy to, Pets R Us or Petco or whatever. So they understand that concept of treating the customers well. And again, they're a publicly held company. So there are examples of publicly held companies that can be easily matched against competitors, but they choose a different operating model.
And the loyalty that you feel after something like that stays with you for a long time. I mean, they're going to have to work hard to lose you now.
Yes,
Because you're
exactly.
always going to remember that.
Yeah, I love these criteria models. The thought that comes to mind at Vistage, we recently had a speaker, Marcus Buckingham, and he talks about how we're really in a transactional world. And what we need to get to is a loving world where it's more relation based. We're trying to build those connections in people. And the carriers are still in that transactional world. Some people are starting, Zappos and Chewy's are starting to get into how do I create these relationships and a more lovingly connection. And when you get those, you really make a connection that's going to stick with people. And it's not just about saving $50 a month. It's about really getting the service and getting a connection with people in a company and a brand that you care about.
Yeah, that's the big picture, to create that loyalty and that enthusiasm for a product that you create. I mean, you have a gift that you can create this great product or this great service that you're providing out to the world. And then how do you want to use that gift? Do you want to, you create these unethical, non-transparent services, or, how you're doing things and no one knows how you're doing it. People are frustrated, they're angry. Or do you want to create this loving, you talk about Marcus Buckingham, loving environment, a loving service, excellent customer service, no questions asked, that people have this positive attitude about you, putting positivity out there. So it's it's a choice to be positive or choice to create this, negative emotions.
And sadly, to bring in the negative, how long do you think the CEO would stay in place if they chose to make a change like that? Because as you mentioned, it is a long-term play. And it will have financial effect immediately, and not in a positive way on the immediate front, definitely in the long term. And I think companies like Zappos and Chewy were set up to be loving, empathetic organizations right from the beginning. But I think it would be a hard play for somebody like AT&T, Verizon, or a cable company to suddenly make a change and say, no, we're going to go the long-term route. And Wall Street's going to get involved and say, yeah, no, that's not what we invested for.
Yeah, I will say, I've noticed that my carrier has much better customer service today than it did 5 years ago. So, and some of that I think is through technology and the ability to get more efficiencies out of front end systems that can do things that people used to do. But I think they're still pretty squarely in a transactional world, as long as they don't fall into that, backtrack into exploitive and making those kind of hard to cancel. We disappear when it's time to answer the phone and you're going to cancel your order. If they stay on that side of it, exploitative, and stay transactional, and we know that they're transactional, I think that's okay. I mean, I can live in that world, but I think that the real value and the people that are going to capture the most value and probably the most margin and profitability, those people that can move more loving, relationship-based, really strong brands with customer loyalty.
Yeah, when you talk about transactional efficiency, we mentioned earlier, and it might have been before we started recording, I don't remember, USAA, and I'm also with them and have been for many, many years, and was always thrilled with them I suppose when you have something that's organized by the military, that's a good indication. It's going to be fairly efficient. But what I've noticed in recent years is that their automated system is not very good.
Mm.
You call up and you have to navigate this deeply annoying phone system. And I mentioned it once to the rep when I finally got through, and she said, "Yeah, everybody complains about that." Well,
Yeah, you should listen to that feedback. Your customers are telling you this, things like that.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, on the other hand, we had a claim. Tree branch came down in our backyard and took out our kid's swing set, now our grandkids' swing set. And I filed the claim, and I mean, I hung up the phone. I went into my account for something else, and the money was already there. It was absolutely unbelievable how fast they responded. So, you will be willing to put up with some imperfections. We don't have to demand that people are perfect.
Hmm.
We just like them to show us a certain amount of consideration and not feel like they're trying to take advantage of us.
Mm-hmm. Because you still had a positive interaction overall with the company.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, you're a little frustrated going through the voice tree. On the other hand, oh, I get my money right away. So that kind of like balances out as opposed to like, oh, that negativity of, oh, we have to play the game with this company. We have to go through all these things. So there's more intentionality that they're trying to do good on some level. Maybe they're trying to cut corners and save a little bit of money, but their overall business model is such to be more positive.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're willing to forgive people for being imperfect when we sense that there's some good intention there or some commitment to professionalism. Okay, people can make mistakes. My wife was on a disastrous trip on Southwest. If you remember the Christmas before last.
Yeah.
But being in St. Louis, Southwest is our main carrier. And overall, we've been very, very happy with them. So we're not going to cut ties with the airline because of an incident that, it was avoidable,
Mhm.
but they seem to have taken a certain amount of accountability for that and learn from that mistake at least, and go back to being a good business.
Mhm.
That brings up a good point in that I wonder how many more customers a cable company or a cell phone carrier would keep. I mean, everybody's talking about cutting the cord for cable companies. I wonder how many more people would stay if they felt like they were being treated reasonably. I mean, I think anyone buying a product or a service understands that the company deserves to make profit,
Mhm.
but not at personal expense. And I wonder if maybe that might be the trigger for a company to change how they treat people when they realize they're bleeding customers. And maybe they need to do something to keep their customers versus trying to attract new ones.
It worked for Netflix, right? Because you brought up that example, Jennifer, that they had some pressure on them. So then they changed their policy and they made a better policy.
You got me thinking about Blockbuster, what happened there, that they were debating whether or not to go digital.
Mhm.
And the overwhelming motivation not to was because of late fees.
Mhm.
We're making a fortune on late fees. Now, how can we give up all these late fees, which you can only do with a physical product? Well, of course, if you don't have any products, then you don't have any late fees either. But there's a little bit of karma in there. I mean, this is always cited as an example of people who weren't they weren't forward looking. But the karma is your main model, your main revenue is taking advantage of people for making mistakes. And that's not something that's going to earn you loyalty from anybody.
And that was one of the primary factors behind the formation of Netflix.
Mhm.
Right.
Where
Believe-
you could, when Netflix first came out, they mailed you a DVD and said you could keep it for as long as you wanted.
Mhm.
You know, you got 5 or 10, I can't remember the number, but when you were done, you'd mail one back and then you could get a new one. But if you wanted to keep one for 3 months, you could do that. So I think one of the risks here for companies that are taking advantage of their customers is there's an opportunity here for disruption. And if you think of a lot of the industries that got disrupted, it's when their customers got furious.
Mhm.
So why did we get Uber or Lyft? Because taxi drivers took advantage of people. Why did we get Netflix? Because Blockbuster took advantage of people. So, you know, maybe the cable companies and cell phone companies are at risk for disruption where somebody comes in and says, you know what, this isn't right. And here's an opportunity to do something different.
I think we'll see that as more as the 5G gets out there. That would be more alternative. I mean, you have fiber options now for the cable people, so there is more options that are coming. The technology's creating more options for people.
Yeah, I have seen some carriers that come on, you know, it's third-party carriers that run on other people's networks. But, you know, they do advertise one fixed fee for the life of forever and
Mhm.
whatever is your rate. And I just wonder, personally haven't taken advantage of any of those, but I wonder if those are options that will catch on and start to disrupt the more traditional models of let's raise your fee until you notice, and then we'll once you start complaining, we'll make a deal.
You know, there's an actor who started something, one of these little cell care, Mint, is that what it's called?
Yeah, Mint Mobile with
yeah.
Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah, and you know, it sounded real good. I heard third hand that some of the customer experience was not that thrilled with it. But at least it was that idea. Let's try and take advantage of the dissatisfaction that's out there. And if you can get, you know, creative people who can make it work, then you have a kind of check and balance that discourages the kind of behavior that we've been talking about.
Yeah. The cable companies, like historically though, they were like insulated because they were monopoly. Because there was, you know, when there wasn't the technology out there, there wasn't a broadband or a direct TV option. There was only one cable company. There wasn't 2 cable companies or 3 cable companies. So they kind of got their bad reputation from many, many years ago.
Yeah, well, I don't everybody here was old enough to remember Rona Martin's Laughing. That Lily Tomlin played this character named Ernestine, who was a telephone
On
operator.
Ringy Dingy.
Yeah, and you can go on YouTube and you can find this mock ad they made for the old AT&T when it was the only phone line in the country, and the final line was, "We don't care, we don't have to. We're the phone company." And I think about that whenever I have experience like this. You know, you just don't have to care because there's nowhere else to go. But as soon as there is, we're going.
Well, that's what the cable companies are saying with the cord cutting,
Yeah.
Mhm.
is that so much is available online. But again, you know, the flip side here is Amazon Prime, where you used to get movies and TV shows for free with no ads.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, last year, in the middle of the year, they said, yeah, no, we're missing out on a revenue stream here. So they suddenly started pushing ads in there. And now there's actually a class action lawsuit against them for changing their terms and conditions in the middle of the year and not giving people, you know, in theory, it should have, if they wanted to make this change, it should have happened when you renewed.
Mhm.
But
You know,
they have rolling renewals, so it would be
we don't want
virtually
Jeff
impossible.
Bezos to lose out on too much. Yeah. But you remember the cable companies did the same thing. When they started, there were no ads. Their ads are at least as much as the networks. But I think that's a good place to wrap it up now. And before we go into the second segment, thank you very much, Jennifer Elder, Jim Ristuccia, and Jon Strickler. Very engaging conversation, gives us some new ways of looking and maybe stimulate some thoughts out there for creative thinkers and innovators. Look for ways of making the world both profitable and ethical. So thank you all for the conversation. For those of you who are watching and listening, if you have a topic you'd like us to take up, please go to my website, ethicsninja.com. Use the contact information. Submit your idea. If it's compelling, we will take it up. And in the meantime, as always, we encourage you to continue grappling with the gray.